we're about ready to start. So you could sit right in front or... Yeah. Okay. Dr. Dewan. How do you pronounce your first name?
My first name? Jubal.
Jubal, okay.
Should be easy, right?
It should be, but I always merge the two. Okay. All right, Lisa? Okay, but if it'll be taped? Okay, great. Okay, then we're free to go. Okay, so good evening to a program, The Heart Never Forgets, a program to honor the struggles and challenges experienced firsthand and in those we love with Alzheimer's. Sometimes you throw a party on a rainy Sunday and change the venue, and hopefully with the live stream and with the tape, it will reach more in the future. And so I do have to say that I have been blown away by the overwhelming and positive support for this Alzheimer's community program as it touches so many of us. And while this has been in the making for several years, as with the first time we try anything, like I remember the first time they handed me my baby and I was like, well, what do I do now? I don't know what I'm doing and we're just gonna go with it and then we know what to do next time. Better. The second kid's not easier, by the way. It struck me lately how lonely sometimes we can feel with the most common of diseases. Cancer, poverty, and struggles, mental illness, poverty, domestic violence, Alzheimer's, lupus. You just feel lonely because you don't reach out. And I'm not sure why we don't reach out and support each other and think that we're all alone in this. And so all of our circumstances are totally unique, but I always say I'm not terminally unique. There are other people who are struggling with similar things. And so the idea behind the date today and June 21st, the longest day, the solstice day, is for those familiar with Alzheimer's and dementia, there is a term sundowning, when after the sun sets and darkness sets in, those dealing with conditions experience an increase in their symptoms like agitation, confusion, anxiety, disorientation. And not only is it scary for them, but for caregivers, they can become, and not that they want to, very frustrated, trying to deal with these behaviors over and over and over again at nighttime. But for this day, the longest day, may those few just extra moments of sunshine give us all a few extra moments of peace and calm. And may it just be abated for just a little bit today. And I know today is set aside to honor fathers and the father figures who shape us, but mothers can be a force to be reckoned with, none more so than Mother Nature. And so the idyllic vision of an event outside in a forest preserve as the sun sets is not happening because there's rain. But we are able to come together and support warm, safe, and dry, and I have so many people to thank for this. So, first of all, I'd like to thank the First Congregational Church for opening their doors to us today. You may notice a few decorations hanging around. They may seem sensory friendly, but they're not for us. They're for VBS this week. And so to open a church doors with almost no notice on Vacation Bible School Eve is not a small sacrifice. And it is not unnoticed and unappreciated. So I'd like to thank the whole staff. I'd especially like to thank Pastor Kyle Rogenbach for her unending support in answering an email that simply said, "I need help." Maybe the hardest 3 words for you too, to get the venue changed. And she took the burden of coordinating communications for those who could get things done when my hands were too full, and reminding me that I can be brave, and reminding me when I am brave that sometimes it's the bottom-up approach of support. Sometimes it's not the people with power and authority who save us. Sometimes it's that bailiff in the corner who's been quiet for an hour who's the real hero of the day. So we need to remember that coming together from the bottom up provides a lot more supportive power than top down. I'd like to thank my grandmother, Linda Lee Wiltsey, who so very many years ago gave me permission to share her name, her story, her innermost writings. Before she was ever diagnosed with Alzheimer's herself, she understood her struggles, and her own diagnosis was her worst nightmare come true. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. When I asked if in the future, and this was around 2015, if I could ever use her beautiful writings, her response was immediate. "Tell them," she said. "Tell them all how horrible this disease is." Finally, I'd like to thank Dr. Jawaba Dwan for graciously and energetically answering the call to come and speak to us about the latest in Alzheimer's research. Since this is a community event and it is not sponsored by any organization that employs Dr. Dwan or myself, which is the same organization, we speak only from our own experience and do not in any way represent the views or opinions of our employers. And also, we are offering information and support, not medical advice. We have also been advised not to state our work affiliations, so while I will allow Dr. Dwan to give his own bio and history, I assure you, I did not find him on the CTA red line. So, and while this may be my brainchild, again, I assure you, this is a community effort. In an effort to be as green as possible and eco-conscious as possible, and also having zero idea how many would attend, I did not print out resources available. There are resources, there's fantastic resources. How to create a dementia-friendly bedroom, dementia-friendly products, how to talk to people with dementia. And I had gone through my own time in 2010 where I was having trouble with memory, and the scariest words are when someone says, "Do you remember?" and you know you absolutely are not gonna remember. And then your brain's trying to scramble to not let them know you don't remember this important thing. So there are, and there are other resources as well, caregiver support and everything. And so if you provide your email on the clipboards, I will email you. And if you're watching this online, just email me and I will email you all the resources. And you don't have to provide any other information, and I will not spam you. I will just send you one list of resources. Also, after the closing song, which we're going to sing a cappella, 11-second time-lapse video of the sunset over the Chicago skyline will play in lieu of us having an actual sunset. And once it plays and the skyline goes dark, the longest day will be over. But hopefully we will all know that we're not alone. And with that, I welcome Dr. Dwan to the microphone to talk about his experience over the years in neuropsychiatric research and maybe a bit of encouragement in the process we have made. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Melissa, for the introduction and invitation. When Melissa sent me an email, asked me, "Do you want to, have organized my first event? I want to have some researcher, scientist to be here." I immediately said, "Yes, of course." Why is that? Because I feel you guys. I just mentioned, actually every family have this. My extended family also has Alzheimer's disease patient. That's about 15 years ago. When I went back to China, I came here 25 years ago from China. But when I first went back to China to visit my father's sister, is my aunt, my father's side. At first time I knew, okay, my aunt actually kind of every day is kind of taking care of my aunt's husband. At that time, she was 80, 15 years ago. Now she is 97. My father is 94. So her husband, my aunt's husband, at that time, 15 years ago, would be, it's like 82. When my aunt was 82. So at that time, at age 82, every day she took care of her husband. Every day she showed a smile. And when I visit them, my aunt, like treat her husband like a baby. I see kind of, first time I so close to a Alzheimer's disease patient at that time. So I feel her, her frustration, but at the same time I feel, oh my God, this is really a devastating disease because he cannot remember anything. It's like a baby, it's like we went back a long time ago. But I was also very, touched at that time because I have not, been back China for many years since I came here at that time. When my aunt asked him, do you know who is this guy? He knew who I am. So that's interesting, right? So I feel amazing, he cannot remember anything. He couldn't remember most of the things and, kind of mess up like a baby, but he still remember my name. It's kind of, not like since then I start to work on Alzheimer's disease, but actually my main research is on schizophrenia, another very, very devastating disorder, mental disorder, probably some of you know. But since then I think, why don't I cannot start? Because they share, schizophrenia also has cognition that, like you have memory problem. You have disorganized speech, not like me now. You also have some, like, you forgot what you want to talk. So it's kind of share some cognitive symptom. But they are, biologically, they're very different because neuropsychiatric disorder is like usually you have some, like start early, like for example, schizophrenia, like 20th, 30th, like in your middle age. But for Alzheimer's disease, we know it's kind of start from late, usually start from like over 60, 65, So it's very different. So I start to research both disease actually in my lab right now. Well, at least Melissa is my colleague, but I cannot talk about who we are, I'm from, but I just want to tell you, I'm Melissa's colleague. So if you know where Melissa, works, you know where I work. And you can search my name, my last name Duan, Jubao Duan. You will see immediately who I am, basically. I have, you will see news about me because my research is pretty good. But so, unfortunately, you will see me everywhere, like if you search online. So anyhow, so my research basically, I start the Alzheimer's disease, as I mentioned, like when I came back from China. And then I kind of start to write about grant, like 2018 or 19, I started writing grant, and I got it the first time. I don't know why. I got the NIH grant for the start Alzheimer's disease. So I have my collaborator, I started to work on this. So what I do, like what I study, I try to show you, to tell you what I'm researching so that you know how I believe the research can benefit the family, the patient, But it's a long shot. The research, as research in the lab, not directly work on the drug, but unfortunately, and none of the drug, as I mentioned, I will talk a little bit about that, none of the drug actually is effective at all at this time, So I think the future, the research is the future. The future, rely on the current research. So what I do in the lab basically is start why somebody is more susceptible than the others. That means, the gene, right? So if you talk about how many people in the state, in the nation, they have Alzheimer's, I'm not sure you guys know how many people we have in this nation. Because you said, where you are not alone. That's true, you're not alone. Why? Because there are, right now it's, well, maybe in a few years. Right now it's near 7 million, I think. But if you think about the populations, US population is 345 million, maybe? So it's like 2% of the population. But as I mentioned, usually Alzheimer's disease, when you get the disease at a later stage, like when you are probably age over 60 or 65. But age 65, the population, more than age of 65 is about like 62, 63 million. So basically, if you are age 60 over 65, basically, we have 1 out of 9 person will have the disease. So think about it, it's like 11%, right? So walk on the street, you see people 65. So it's quite common, actually, when you are over that age. And if we talk about somebody, let's say you live more than 85, like 2/3 of them, basically a third, you will have that disease, But among those, with Alzheimer's disease, 2/3 of them, unfortunately, are women. But on the other hand, why is that? Can you let me know why is that? I don't know. Well, because women usually live longer. They live longer. Longevity, usually, that's a good thing or bad thing, right? But anyhow, so that's the aging, right? But in addition to those aging, actually, the very important thing is like gene, family. You may notice that, they run in family. Like neuropsychiatric disorder, schizophrenia, for example, also run in family. So that means, you have some gene run in the family or in the community, in the society. But they are not the main players. That does not necessarily mean if you have that gene, the defective gene, you will have the disease. No, absolutely no. So it's not like that. So it's actually the risk, the strongest risk called ApoE4. I'm not sure if you do research online, ApoE4 is the strongest risk allele for Alzheimer's disease. So even with that, if you have 2 ApoE4 allele, like in your cell, like we have genetic material, right? Called like a gene, basic unit is gene in the cell. You guys know what's a cell, right? Yeah. Cell, yeah. So I do not need to. Yeah. Yeah. So the gene, the worst the gene, ApoE4, right? If you have 2 alleles, 2 ApoE4, those part, the chance, you got the disease is maybe 12 times higher than the regular person. But if you have 1, maybe 3 to 4 times. So that's the worst, But even you have 2, the chance you get the disease is not 100%, maybe 30% or 50%, the chance you will have the disease. Why? Because environmental and also some other lifestyle also play an important role there. So it's not like, why? You have the bad gene, you are the one to blame. But you can mitigate that, basically. So there are some other ways, basically. Besides the drug, we can talk about, although there's no effective drug now. So that's what I study about, those genes, basically. ApoE4 is the worst gene, the bad guy. But there are other bad guys, too. ApoE4 is not the only one. Right now, when, in my lab and also other scientists, what they do, basically, how you can identify those genes. Now we compare, we rely on the community, we rely on the patient, we recruit the sample. Melissa, working RB, approve those protocols, recruit some people, basically, right? And then, we compare the patient and regular population to identify okay, which gene, which is defective in the patient, and compared to regular population. So we identify those genes. Now in my lab, once we identify those genes, actually right now we know there are about 100 genes, more than 100 genes. But basically inside the cell you have your genetic material. There are 100, like more than 75 spots. Basically, though you have better genes there. If that may confer higher susceptibility to the disease. But how can we, understand those disease? How that happen? Why this gene, can cause disease? Can we reverse that process? So what we do in the lab, basically, we collect patient drop of blood. Because it's not easy to start the brain, unless post-mortem brain. Indeed, it's very helpful research resource for the scientist, the post-mortem brain, to help you understand what's the pathological changes inside the brain, what happened, right? But in the lab, if you want to study how the cell, how they progress, we kind of take a drop of blood, we convert those cells into stem cell. Like, what's the stem cell? It's like from the beginning of the life, basically you fertilized egg, right? And then you have stem cell, and those stem cells, single stem cell, can develop into skin cell, the heart cell, brain cell, right? So that's the stem cell, like original, basically, cell that can generate all your cells in the body. So now we basically take the drop of blood, we convert that into stem cell. It's not embryonic stem cell per se. This is just kind of induced. And then we differentiate them into brain cell, including in differentiating them like something like a blob, like a mini brain. They have some brain structure, so that we can know, whether this gene, let's say you introduce this bad gene, whether they can, what kind of, cellular changes you can observe. Can you use some chemicals, drugs to treat that to reverse the phenotype, the cellular phenotypes? So that's what we do in the lab. I'm not sure if this sounds too complicated, or can you understand what I said? Okay. So yeah, that's the research I'm doing. But talk about the drug. Can we, when can we have the drug? Well, the drug on the market now, I think Eli Lilly, and there's another Biogen. But those drugs, basically, they only kind of maybe modify a little bit of the symptoms, maybe improve or delay the onset of the disease a little bit. They target some protein called, probably you heard, like if you do the brain's imaging, you will find, okay, yeah, your brain has plaque, have some amyloid, kind of plaque. And then you say, okay, you may have the Alzheimer's disease. That's kind of diagnosis. Now, the drug basically target those ones. So that means they found you have the problem, and then the drug basically target those, the plaque, the protein, the material, and the antibody can clean up that. But first of all, it's not so efficient. And also when you identify those, basically the cell, your brain, basically the neurons already kind of is too late, they are dying. So you cannot revive them, basically. So you can only maybe delay a little bit onset, that's why. So if you talk about how long it, how effective it could be. So basically, if you talk about 18 in clinical trial, if you talk about 18 month trial period, you can find, okay, the drug may delay about 5 months or 6 months So it's like 30%. But just a delay, a few months delay, right? So it's not really a cure. So that's the status of the current FDA-approved drugs, basically. Now, what about, other drugs may work in the future? I believe that will start from, that will come from the research, like what I'm doing and others are doing. Like we talk about bad gene, right? So I think can we correct the gene, we ask, right? Yes, I think we believe we can. I'm not sure if you heard the gene editing. I'm not talking about embryo editing, embryo gene editing, right? So it's like in your cells, in the brain cells, basically, for example, if you can deliver some of the tools, let's say, okay? The tools, you can imagine, it's like a scissor, right? You can cut out the bad gene, and you replace that with good gene. Because we talk about, for example, ApoE4, which is the bad guy. If you can cut out ApoE4 and replace that with the kind of a sister copy, which is a good copy, and then actually that good copy called ApoE2 is protective. So it will help. But again, it's not, even you have the ApoE4 gene, you will not 100%, not going to 100% get disease. So there's a trade back. Like you put into the good copy, but it may do something else, so there's a risk. But still, I think it's a good thing overall. Like if you can, in the future, I think we are very close, particularly in the last decade. Gene editing, I'm not sure if you search like gene editing, CRISPR, CRISPR, you heard that, right? Because that's Nobel Prize winning, technology in the last couple of years. So I think that's the future, basically. That can basically, once for all, you can treat the disease, I think I'm very optimistic about that part. And another, a strategy, I think, future medicine that can cure the disease may come from, I talk about the cell, right? Bad gene make the bad product in the cell. What are the important cells in the brain to kind of with regard to the Alzheimer's disease? Now, neuron is most important thing, right? Because neurons, basically, the neuron is dying, so you lost the memory. Because neurons are responsible for your everyday, like, brain activity, right? So they are dying. You can revive that. That's one thing, right? Another important thing is that the cell, you have the bad gene. Let's say some environmental factor, cause the defect, interact with the bad gene, so that make the cell function dysfunctional. So how can you reverse the cell function? One important type of cell called microglia. It's like we have immune cell in our blood, right? So that's the immune cell in the brain, basically, the microglia. How that can be bad? For example, just to give you an example, last year we published a paper in Nature. I'm not sure if you know the Nature. Nature is science. Nature is they are all the best journal in the world, right? So what we found is like microglia, there's a bad gene. Another gene is not ApoE4, another gene. We found that bad gene caused the microglia kind of become fatty. Why is that? Because when you have the defective gene, basically its product cannot clean up the brain debris, basically. The cell cannot function the way it's supposed to, cannot do cleanup work. So that makes the cell kind of, why is that? Because the cell become too fatty because of that genetic defect. So how can we reverse that? It's doable. Why? Because if let's say the cellular level, we can correct the gene, make the cell become more functional, we can replace that, the bad cell with the good cell. So it's called cell therapy. It's like CAR T. I'm not sure you heard about that, CAR T to treat the cancer cell, right? So I think similar concept can work, may work for Alzheimer's disease treatment in the future. So I think those two are important things. And also other things like existing drug, instead of target to, simple the antibody and beta amyloid, maybe you can work with the combination of the different drugs, you can, make it better, improve better. So I think we should be optimistic for the future, but it's not here yet, right? So in the meantime, while we should be optimistic, what can we do to mitigate the disease? I think their lifestyle, you will, what I will say basically. Lifestyle, manage your lifestyle, and diet, the food, what you eat in China. I think we have the same meaning, saying here, I guess, right? So control your diet, eat healthy food. I think that's very important because lifestyle is a big risk too. If you can manage good lifestyle, basically you can reduce Alzheimer's disease risk by, I think, half maybe. So it's really important, And then, at the same time, you have to control those known risk factors. For example, if you have high blood pressure, you should control that because high blood pressure can do many, many damages, and not only to your immune system, but also to the brain cells. So that's important. And lipid, cholesterol level should also be controlled. Those are, from medical perspective. But if you talk about other lifestyle, for example, stay active. I think, we all need to stay active. Actually, when Melissa sent me the email, I was walking by the lake, actually, the other day. Although I don't think, my family, my mother passed away at 94, so she's sharp, very sharp. My father too is he's 94. But I think every day I try to be, active, exercise a little bit, refresh my brain. So I think, that's a very important thing, stay active. And finally, I would like to say, you are not alone. I think socially we have to stay connected, support each other. I think it's very, very important too. With that, thank you very much. I think if you have any questions, I'm not sure if you have I have time to answer any questions. If, yeah.
Very well thought. Thank you.
I heard you mention the plaque.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic that you can erase the plaque? Or once you've got the plaque?
I think, it's important to, that's a good question. Right now, we cannot, I think. We cannot. I think, early diagnosis is the key. Like before you have the plaque, let's say you have high risk, and then maybe at the early stage, you have some cognition decline, you feel before you have the plaque. I think it's important to, in the future, let's say you can use gene therapy, right? But once you have the plaque, I think, right now the current drug treatment strategy is target those plaque. But the plaque, think about that. The plaque is a consequence, but it may not be causal, So talk about the plaque. Actually, Alzheimer's disease was defined by those plaque. 100 years ago, I'm not sure if you know this story. It's like why they called Alzheimer's disease, because that's named by the doctor's name. A doctor called Alzheimer 100 years ago. When he studied his first patient, like a brain biopsy, and do some kind of staining under the microscope, what he found is there are a lot of like plaque in the brain, in the cells. But he also found some other thing, like the cell I mentioned called microglia, like a brain immune cell. He also found those cells, they have a lot of fat. It's like called lipid, like drop of lipid, called lipid droplet. That's what we found last year, the microglia, a defective gene caused microglia has accumulate a lot of lipid droplet, in the cell. Can we reverse that? I think yes, but once, once you found it early, I think you can reverse those lipid, recover the cell function so that they can clean up things in the brain. But still, you don't know the plaque is the cause or the consequence. It may be just the consequence. So I think the most important thing, like the root, the gene is the root, I think. If you have some gene, like a cellular function, you can recover those cells. I think that can improve, really reach the purpose of a cure of the disease, I think. Yeah.
So for the online people, the previous question was, can you get rid of all the plaque? My question is, can you speak a little bit about, I know, or I read, saw on the internet, some countries call Alzheimer's diabetes 3. Can you explain a little bit of why that relation is there, what that sort of means?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. That's why I said, you should control, those, your lipid, the cholesterol level. Diabetes, is diabetes also, you have high sugar. Diabetes also related to neuron transmission. It's not just, like what you see, right? So it's like a neuron transmitter. It's also kind of related to the brain. Now, Alzheimer's disease, basically, you have those like lipid level and sugar, they are connected biologically, But if you talk about the gene, it's not the same, basically. The risk gene, for sure, is not the same. But that's why, different genes, as I mentioned, let's say you add this gene, that gene, it does something else. So that's the trade-off sometimes, So yeah, they are connected at the cellular level, some like a processes, but it's not the same, basically, yeah.
My mother-in-law had early onset dementia, Alzheimer's, in the 90s, and they gave her medication that was experimental at the time that kind of slowed it down and she went backwards a little bit in her dementia. Like I said, though, it was experimental, and it sounds like that's as far as we've gotten, though, since the 90s.
Well, that's pretty impressive. At 90s, I think, I'm not sure what kind of drug, at 90s, but, it has been very difficult to reach you mean 1990s, right? Yeah, I don't know what kind of drug that could be, but I think, I bet it also target to the beta amyloid, those, the kind of traditional target, like the drug, Eli Lilly from Biogen, those so-called FDA newly approved drug. A couple of years ago, that's the only drug approved by FDA for Alzheimer's disease. All the other drugs approved by FDA, I think they are not. They kind of improve a little bit the symptoms, even not try to modify the pathology like beta amyloid. So yeah, none of the drug is really helpful. Yeah, it's not a cure. Yeah, for cure. Pleasure.
Thank you very much for being here, Doctor. On the issue of the plaque buildup, what is your opinion on, is there a correlation potentially between the heavy metals that they're finding in brains, if that's true, the plaque, and then also I've been reviewing information and know someone whose wife had this recently, and I'd like to find this out, that there's some type of new MRI that is supposedly helping to reveal if what the level of Alzheimer's is currently and how it's staging. And I'd like your opinion on that for myself, especially.
My friend is expert on brain MRI. I know a little bit about the MRI thing. So I think, the traditional approach to diagnosis Alzheimer's disease is use MRI and also PET scan to see whether you have the plaque. You have, those kind of beta amyloid deposit in the brain. But if you talk about the what's the other part of the question? I have some.
There's a new, thank you. My understanding is that there's starting to be a recognition of the heavy metals, the plaque, but also there is a new MRI that's out recently, within just maybe the last year I started hearing about this, that is allowing a determination of where you are in the process.
Stage,
possibly
like what
how
stage?
It's, yes,
Okay.
how it's marching on.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I know from diagnosis perspective, actually right now, last year, they have new FDA just approved the new so-called early diagnosis approach method. It's like, it's basically blood test. The blood test is much easier. Actually, I think what they say is very similar to the MR or PET scan in terms of the diagnosis, but still that target to kind of beta amyloid or p-tau is another like kind of bad protein produced in the brain. So it's like you have those bad protein produced in the brain, but they can penetrate the blood-brain barrier to get into your blood, so that you can test them if you have. But that's for still for kind of early stage. You try to let's say when you have over 50 or 60, you have some memory problem, and then you try to get a blood test. If you have those, basically, yeah, you're likely to have Alzheimer's disease. That's based on beta amyloid and p-tau. And if you don't have that, they can exclude the Alzheimer's disease. So the blood test, I think, is easier approach than brain imaging for now. But in terms of the heavy metal, obviously you are a researcher, I can see. There are a lot of theories, basically. It's like early day infection by some virus can also cause Alzheimer's disease. And some vaccination may also help. So there are a lot of theories right now. Like some brain cells, kind of the mutation in the individual cells. So yeah, I mean, they may play a role. That's why I think healthy lifestyle may, definitely is a good thing to practice, I think. Yeah.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Have you been able to determine if Alzheimer's actually can skip a generation? So maybe a grandmother, a mother, but then the next generation seems to not have it, and then maybe, is that been determined, and can that happen? I'm hoping.
Oh, well,
Yeah, asking for a friend.
I'm talking about the late onset Alzheimer's disease. There are some very early onset. There are even ApoE4, the bad guy I mentioned, is even that one is for late onset disease, right? For late onset disease, as I said, even if you have 2 copies, you may not have the disease, So it's not even, let's say, skip the next generation. Even the same generation, you may not get disease. But for those familiar, like, that's very, it's like you have the risk, the bad part of the gene is very, you will have the disease, basically. But can you skip the next generation? If you have that kind of bad gene, it's not like, there are, I talk about the cell gene, right? You have 2 copies, one from father, one from mother, right? So let's say the mother side has a bad gene. Now you inherit that part. Well, okay, that's not a good thing, right? But you may have, because there are 2 chromosomes, always like the same gene, you have 2, one from father, one from mother side, right? So you may get another copy. So that means you will definitely skip that in this, that I'm still talking about those, the highly risk, familiar kind of risk there. So it's not something you can control, I guess, right? So you just get what you get, right? So
in your opinion, doctor, is the best if I'm understanding you correctly, the best way to determine if we carry that gene or such is blood testing?
It's not like a blood testing, but it can be, now you can, you can take a drop blood and you do something and then you can sequence them. Basically, you can read them, If you talk about, let's say, I can a little bit deeper, like a gene. What's the gene? Basically, gene, you have a sequence like A, G, C, T, 4 alphabet, 4 letters, basically, like different combination in the gene. Let's say you have A, G, C, T, the combination. If you have something wrong, like one letter is wrong, can be problematic. Now, so basically you take the material, you can run through some instrument, you can get the sequence out immediately. Not immediately, but very quickly, yeah. Run out, that can be done. Like for example, ApoE4 allele, you can sequence them, even in our research, but we are not allowed to tell the patient, if it's not consent. Sometimes even patients want to know, we don't have the authority to tell them, you have that or not. That's how the rule, that's how the rule basically. But you can sequence them. You can know. If you want to know by yourself, there are some commercial companies. But the problem is, even you know, what can you do? Because there's no drug to treat that, basically.
Well, I think you hit on it that
Yeah.
you said, and I believe this because I see it in my own family, that lifestyle is such a key
Yes.
from what we've seen in our family, who has either had Alzheimer's much later on, they were very active, did sports, things like that, excuse me. They were very active, did sports, ate very well, and it seems to have affected them. Also, if you don't drink, if they don't drink alcohol, I mean, it seems to be maybe that's a big factor too. Things
Yeah.
like that.
Yes, alcohol is not good, for sure. But on the other hand, you may think alcohol, sometimes you drink a little bit alcohol can make like socialize, more kind of be socially connect to other people, connect to the society, I think that's also important, like being, happiness, right? To make you happy, socially, you feel socially connected, not socially loneliness, So I think that's also important. But for sure, alcohol by itself
Excess.
is not good. Yeah.
Yeah, excess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you. And I just have to say, I love how you outlined it. Just the sequencing you went through to explain was really helpful, and I think it'll help a lot of people who watch this. So as you may have gathered, and when I met with Dr. Dwan in his office, my family has a high prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And I will say that people don't think of this, but there is an advantage of having a family with generations of teenage pregnancy. And that is that I know all the people in my grandma's story, because my first great-grandparent didn't die until I was 14, and I never lost a grandparent until I was 39, and I'm 51 and I still have one in memory care hanging on, okay? So the good news is these are not people of folklore, these are people I've met and know well. And I will say that my grandmother, by the time, like I said, the first time you do something, by the time she got to being a great-grandparent, barely older than me, she was like Nobel Prize for grandparenting worthy, taking my daughter's little flat Lexi on adventures and creating a book for her class project that was like, take your flat self home and write an essay, and yeah, she outdid herself. So anyway, and again, I just want to state, because it is important to me, that we honor the privacy of those going through this right now but my grandmother was like, disclose it all. That being said, she is a writer. And she belonged to writers' clubs over the years, and I have been so privileged to be the recipient of so many of her writings, some that I siphoned out when she didn't notice out of her memory care unit. But I have this book, Stories of My Life by my grandmother. And in this book, written years and years ago, are woven stories about growing up on a farm, and her favorite vegetable was green beans, and she played the clarinet. And she had a pet chicken with a bad foot named Limpy and a pet toad named Toady. So she's not good at naming animals creatively. But in between are often woven stories or sentences about how terrified she was of Alzheimer's disease, because she had seen it so much before. And her mother did not have Alzheimer's disease, but she had dementia. And I often tell the story, I never knew great-grandma she smoked heavily for 67 years and did not die of lung cancer. And then one day I went to visit her at her home, and I said to my grandma, why isn't great-grandma Dorothy smoking? And she just said, oh, she forgot she ever did. Sometimes you have to laugh so you don't cry. So I have read this story before. It was on videotape, though, with no audience, other than Tanner was fiddling with the tripod. So I was maybe a bit more robotic than I might be today, and it might hit a little differently today, because today is different than last year. But again, I reiterate, she gave me permission so long ago to use it in the future. Can someone bring me up some Kleenex, and someone give my aunt one too? Because I just know. So she wrote this short story, Alzheimer's Robs Us All, on May 4th, 2014. This was exactly 5 days before her sister Marilyn died of Alzheimer's. This was 107 days before her sister Margaret died of Alzheimer's. This was 121 days before her husband, my grandfather, died of lung cancer. And it was 6 years and 7 months before her younger sister, diagnosed at age 58, died from Alzheimer's. So the fact that she could even write coherently at this time in her life is a testament to her perseverance and personality. And I'm sure you will understand the raw emotion behind it. All right. So Alzheimer's Robs Us All by Linda Wiltsey. Alzheimer's is a terrible disease. I have 3 sisters that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. 2 are my older sisters, and 1 is my younger sister. My older sisters are in the late stages of this disease. My younger sister seems to be holding her own thanks to some medications that are slowing down the progression of the disease. I could write a book about being in the midst of this horror story. My sister Margaret was my best friend and confidant throughout my life. Margaret could have been a stand-up comedian with her sense of humor. Her positive outlook rubbed off on everyone who came in contact with her. She was a very talented musician, playing piano and organ professionally for several years, and jazz was her forte. When Alzheimer's took away her ability to play music for the people she loved, it was heartbreaking. Alzheimer's robs us all. My sister Marilyn was unique. She seemed to be trapped in her own world. She had a genius IQ, and I believe she was truly misunderstood. When we were young, we shared a bedroom, and our territories were clearly marked. Her side, my side, and we did not invade each other's territory. Whenever there was a bad storm with claps of thunder and bolts of lightning, I would be terrified and begin to cry. And suddenly, the territorial rule was forgotten, and Mary would turn down her covers and motion for me to crawl into her bed, and she would hug me until the storm was over and I had calmed down. And there was never any mention of this in the morning to me or anyone else. Mary was never able to express her love for me, but I know she loves me, and I will never forget those nights she comforted me, because Alzheimer's robs us all. My younger sister Sue was a lot younger than me, and she was much quieter than the rest of us, but she cared about everyone. She spent her career working as a case manager for children in the foster care system in Michigan. We had our differences as adults, but we have been able to put aside our differences. It's strange how something good came out of something so bad. She was diagnosed at age 58, and by 60, taking her out to her favorite Chinese restaurant became hard, but I still do it because she enjoys it. Oh God, Margaret, what will I do when I lose you? I love you, Margaret. Oh God, Mary, what will I do when I lose you? I love you, Marilyn. Oh God, Sue, the thought of losing my last sister to this disease is unbearable. What will I do? I love you, Sue. Alzheimer's robs us all. So, thank you. And on that note, I was going to take some time. Again, we don't have a large audience, but before we just have like a little moment of silence to honor the struggle of both caregivers and people struggling firsthand with the disease. Again, just to honor privacy, those who have passed, we talked about maybe just like naming first names. And then if you have someone currently affected and you want to just say, I have 2 loved ones affected, or I have 1 loved one affected, just to kind of protect their privacy. I think especially in this like intimate group setting, that's okay. So I'm going to list off the people that I have lost that have had Alzheimer's and dementia, and you can see the list is long, and then obviously my grandmother is living still. But those I have lost have been, and not all of them necessarily died from Alzheimer's disease, but they all died with Alzheimer's disease or dementia. So there was Dorothy, and there was Margaret, and there was Marilyn, and there was Sue, and there was Merle, and there was Virginia, and there was Ellyn. And so hopefully, we look with optimism moving forward. So if anyone else wants to honor anyone up, again, it's not a religious thing, just honoring the collective support we all need.
I'm remembering my parents, who both died of some sort of dementia. They refused to get tested, so. My dad, I think, had Lewy body, so he was hallucinating. But so Carolyn and Robert, and I presently have a brother and a brother-in-law who are struggling with dementia-related issues. So.
My grandfather and my dad.
My dad and each of his siblings, Paul, Jean, and Ralph.
We have a very dear neighbor, Wendy, who's going through the latest stages, and it's going to take her very soon. She's been very close to our family.
I have 2 friends, Veet and Ginny, who are both struggling with Alzheimer's. Yesterday I was doing a bike ride with Veet and he got a phone call, and it was his wife, and he said, "Are you the person I live with? Is that who's calling me?" And so it's progressing. He couldn't remember words, but he has plaque. They saw in his MRI, so. But pray for him.
Aunt Diane, did I miss anyone?
Pardon, honey?
Did I miss anyone?
I'm gonna say, repeat your list because mine's the same list. These things here's my niece.
That's fine. Just one real quick story, and Dr. Dwan touched on it. Like, it is interesting, like, you mentioned that you went back and your loved one remembered you. Back in 2022, I lost a cat that was very dear to me, and I thought I would never recover, and I was never, ever going to get another cat again until, 4 days later when I look on the Humane Society website, and there's this little blonde guy with a little like bow tie, and I'm like, oh, I gotta go get him. And on a whim, I named him Harlow, and Harlow was my grandmother's stepfather, which was unusual back then, but she adored him. And long after she lost the rest of our names, she remembered Harlow, you know. And she still, as somebody can verify, she lit up when she saw me. And I was one of the few people, like, you know, sometimes you gotta laugh. She did not threaten to kill that day. So, you know, it's her go-to when she gets frustrated. Like, and she can't always, like, articulate full sentences. And I think that just happens to be one she can articulate. So it is her go-to. So on that note, anyone with any musical ability, let's, if you all wish, there are song lyrics on the back. And we're gonna just sing a cappella.
Oh, I gotta get
How about if
mine.
I just move my lips?
That's
Yeah.
that's a family trait too.
Yes, we can't sing.
Oh, Tanner, you know how to sing. Can you get us started off on this a cappella? Do you
All right. A 1 and a 2 and a 3. You. All right. We ready?
Okay.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I woke, dear, I was mistaken, so I hung my head and cried. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. I'll always love you and make you happy if you will only the same. But if you leave me to love another, you'll regret it all one day. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Please don't take my sunshine away. Please don't take my sunshine away.
And the longest day is done. Thank you, everyone.
My friend, he said he can't remember words, but he says, now my emotions are stronger. And everything he sees, he loves. And it's such a joy to be around him. Because he'll just look at houses and go, look at these houses. Aren't they different? So inhibitions are different, right? Yeah, and he'll look at the trees and he'll just go, look at it. So that's a blessing to see him further.
This is things in different dimensions.
Much for
Great.
coming all this.